Okay, it's Wendy. We have finished the cover of my version of a mini album. So we got it done without too much problems. I'm surprised. Sometimes those covers just fight. So we're going to work on the pages next. I've got some recycled Tyvek because you're probably going, well, you got chipboard in there, and then you've got the grommets, so that shouldn't tear. What about the pages? That's where the Tyvek comes in. So, we need our cover. I need 12 sheets of of the craft card stuff. Now, our book is 7 by 7. So, but you got to remember, we've got this here. So realistically, our pages, I mean, we can make them 7 by 7 and they'll fit. But I'm going to make them 6 3/4 by 6 3/4. Yes, I know it's an odd size. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to make them so that the pocket is attached. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one sheet, or cut 6 sheets at 6 3/4. Do these all at 6 3/4 by 11 for now. Now, when I take these sheets and score them at 6 3/4, I'm going to have 4 1/4 left. That's just a hair too big. So I am going to take and cut these down 1/2 inch. So the ending on this first set of 6 is going to be 6 3/4 by 9 1/2, or 10 1/2, pardon me, because I only took off 1/2 inch. Now these I need a 1/2 inch tab on each side. So if I cut them at 7 3/4, because remember they're 6 3/4 width, and then I need a 1/2 inch on the bottom, so I need to cut them 7 1/4. Because our pages are 6 3/4, going to be 6 3/4 tall. We need that. We need a 1/2 inch. And we can save this stuff. It'll make sense once I start scoring. So 7 3/4. Now you two behave. You've been fed. Of course, that don't mean anything to the cat. Okay, so 7 3/4 by 7 1/4. You know, I really wasn't. I was okay at math. Since I started crafting, I've gotten better. All right. So now we need our scoreboard. And wider. I have these stylus. One has very narrow, one has wider. Sometimes, depending upon which cardstock I get, the wider works better. Of the smaller tips, sometimes the smaller works. So, on this piece, which is the 7 1/4 by 7 3/4, we're going to score 1/2 inch on 3 sides. Let me make sure I'm doing. Just make sure on the 7 3/4 side you're scoring 1/2 inch on that, because you only want one on the 7 3/4 side. Yeah, I did it right. So place your 7 3/4 side up first. I don't know why that seems crooked. It's just me. Okay. Put that 7 3/4. Start with your 7 3/4. Rotate. Score. Whoops. And rotate again. That way you end up the right way. Whoops. I put the 7 1/4. If you put the 7 1/4 up, just remember you gotta do it on the 7 3/4. So put your 7 3/4 up first. Score your first 1/2 inch. Rotate. You can either rotate it left or right. It doesn't matter. As long as you have the squares along. Three sides, and they all match. Just realize if you score it wrong, where you do it on the two 7 1/4, if you do it on both where you have 7 1/4 up, it's going to make your page short. Okay, so we got that done. Okay, now this page is 6 3/4. and we're going to put a pocket in it. We're going to put the pocket in it, but we're going to use we're going to clip it. So what you want to do is put your paper in the long way to the 10 1/2. Score at 6 3/4. I'll show you what I mean when we get there. We're going to do a little funky binding. Dump my pages. Okay. Now, if you wanted to make this a tab one, you would cut it 7 3/4, do the score at 6 3/4 here, 1/2 inch on each side, and cut all the way down to your score line from the top edge down. What I'm going to show you is going to take away the need for that. Okay, so we have these. We're going to work on these first because we need to form our pockets. There it is. So I have a couple pieces of scrap cardstock. Now, there is something you could do. If you want to make it fancy, you can use a punch. I have a label punch that I can use. I have a circle punch that could be used. But I'm just going to take, and I know that my pocket width is 3 3/4. And this is 2 1/2. But if I put it in the middle, it will hold it. And I'm going to need 12 of these. And I need them to be 1.5 inches wide. Yeah. Let's see how big this is. I can cut the 2 I need out of that. Just cut this down. This is why I save my scraps like this, because I do all kinds of funky things when I'm binding things. So 2 1/2, okay. I don't have to cut a whole new piece of paper. 2 1/2. Okay. Now we're going to take and score these. Yes, and if you notice, I do change cutters and scoreboards. It depends upon what I'm working on. Now, I am going to use my wider or my slightly bigger tip here. This is 1.5. I'm going to score at 3/4. Okay. Now that I have them all scored, this is where the fun comes in. Because you have some options here. You can take and fold these like this. You can put your pattern paper down. And if you want, you can take some sort of punch and punch these so that once you put your pattern paper down, you can add them, and they add a little bit of decoration. Add a little bit of decoration to the page, which I think is what I am going to do. So I'm going to get these all folded, and then I think I'm just going to use a punch. An edge punch. Nothing fancy. You only have to punch one side, one edge. Okay. Let me get the edge punch. Punch I want. I really need to clean up my crafter. I think I want stub. And like I said, you only have to do one edge. So because I only have to do one edge, I'm going to do these 3 at a time. I'm using the We Are Memory Keepers. I'm using the stub. I think. Yep. Because I think it will go nice with that paper. You know, when I took my little break, I went and got something to drink, and I realized we have cherry 7-Up. And it took me back because when I was younger, my parents would take us out to eat, and they took us to some pretty, at that day for them, were fancy places. Used to go to one place called Michael's, and I mean, they had the white tablecloths and that. Or we went out, there was a real fancy restaurant at an airport that was about an hour away from us that we would go to. And we girls, we would order Shirley Temples, which is basically cherry 7-Up with fruit in it. But we thought we were being real fancy. But yeah, they got to know us because we would come to these places quite often, it seemed like. And we actually had servers kind of argue over who was going to wait on us because we kids were good. We said please and thank you. We didn't run around, misbehave. Even my youngest sisters. I mean, they could have been 1 and 2 at the time, and they still were behaved. But my parents took us in. I remember thinking how grown up we were when we got Shirley Temples. Yeah, right. Okay, so because we're going to do that little edge decoration, we need to pick out papers. I'm trying to dig through to get the paper. Okay. If you remember my last video, this is what I do. I go through and rip out pages. I think some of these would fit on the